I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate. We think too much and feel too little. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness. Without these qualities, life will be violent. No one will be lost. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, to do away with greed. Now let us fight to free the world, to fulfill that promise. Let us all unite.
Welcome, folks, to the Corporation Nation radio program. I'm Clint, your host. It is the 15th of May, and it is Free Burt Thursday. Burt, welcome to the show.
Howdy, folks. I'm kind of excited today.
Excited?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
What's you excited about, man?
Man, I'm excited about the fact that freedom is alive and well. It's just kind of hidden.
It's kind of squashed under a big, dark, black boot, I'd say.
Well, I would say under a big, dark blanket that is preventing it from shining and enlightening the path for everybody.
Could be. Burt's website is onlyfreemen.com, freemen.com, and that, of course, includes the female of the species, so please don't feel limited. What are we talking about today, Burt? We never have time to talk anymore. You're always so dang busy.
How about we are always busy?
Could be.
So, no, I know it's hard to make time, but yeah, I want to see if we can talk about something very important point on this particular Supreme Court case that was opined on by Mr. Kennedy, right, in 2011, and it's Bond versus United States involving the 10th Amendment. And there are some very important points in this case that everybody needs to comprehend. And the thing that is very important about this particular case to remember is that this was brought on by an attorney. So there are good attorneys out there, okay, who actually bring up the truth sometimes to the court.
Well, what's the actual story behind the case? What was the case, just in brief? What was the case about?
Yeah, well, basically it was a woman that her husband apparently got some other woman pregnant, and then this one lady was going around putting chemicals on the doorknobs and the car handles of the pregnant woman's, property to make her sick. And the federal agencies got involved and investigated her, and then accused her with violating Section 29 of the Title 18 U.S. Code, and put her through the ringer.
Did you say Title 18?
Uh-huh.
Isn't that weapons? Isn't that biological, all that stuff? Biological weapons and...
It's dealing with chemical weapons.
Chemical weapons.
Yeah, they accused her of using chemical weapons, which is it's crazy. But the important point in here, she could have made, in part of her argument involve actually treaties and things with other countries and all that, but that's not the highlight of the case. The highlight of the case was that she was being accused of a crime that actually also existed within her particular state. And the Supreme Court basically ruled that if you have the same crime in your state, as opposed to it also existing in the federal realm, the punishment that you would receive under the federal statutes cannot be greater than that of the state. So that was like one point that was made clear in this particular case. Now, the one thing that I'm finding out, because I'm reviewing other cases, and the propaganda that is spread out through the news very often is that, oh, look at this new case that's out there, the Supreme Court ruled on this thing and made new case law, or the Supreme Court of some other state or whatever. And what I'm finding out is that most of these courts are not, in fact, creating anything new. They're just simply clarifying principles of law.
So they're chipping away slowly at a principle, basically.
Yeah, making it more clear, because a lot of these lower courts, and you know, those are the appellate courts, very often they rule wrong. Surprise, surprise. And that is mainly because, well, what I'm finding out is laziness on the part of the court, or it could just be that the court is too busy. But really the fault falls on those people who are the litigants in the case, because you are supposed to present to the judge everything that you want the judge to consider. The judge does not have the job of going into the back room and researching, you know, the 300 lineal feet worth of books to find the solution for your case. So you're supposed to do that work, okay? And but the courts are also in error very often in the comprehension of principles of law. Because remember, what I keep saying is that we're in fact already free. And if we were to think like we're free and act like we are free, we will be able to see a lot more that we're not seeing now. And the same thing applies to the courts. They are stuck in statutory mode, and they do not look or see beyond the statutes that are written in front of them. And even the statutes themselves are not a source of law. And when you're going to court and you're dealing in court, this is the part that people really need to comprehend. The common law, okay, is what they call case law. So you must bring in case law to back up either the particular statute that you're quoting or the point or principle that you're trying to get the court to understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've certainly covered that in detail, that especially the part about a judge, that the judge is not there to help you. He's not there to introduce law for you or do anything, you know, to lift a finger basically to help you. And on that same token, if you do show up prepared, or you send all the paperwork you need to do, you present everything that's going to be in the case, he's going to have a lot more respect for you and your case. That's probably the most important aspect of this.
Yeah, well, and you know, and it's not so much that you're looking for respect from the court or approval from the court. You just got to make your case. You just have to let the judge know, hey, this is how it is. This is what the higher court above you ruled. This is what they evaluated to be the principle of law associated with this particular situation. What say you? You know, and then put the burden on them to disagree with the higher court. Because remember, we don't want to go into court and make a bunch of affirmations. We're going to say, hey, you know, it kind of looks like this higher court said this, and it kind of appears to apply here. But of course, it's up to for you, Your Honor, to make the decision. You know? Your Honor. Your Highness referee, you know, because that's another, you know, very important point that it's hard for people to comprehend. You must go to court and look at the judge as nothing more than a referee. If you start looking at this judge like, you know, some kind of a god or something that makes you, you know, puts fear in your bones, then you're seeing as that whoever it is in black as something other than a referee. Why would you be terrified of a referee in a game? You know, what if the referee showed up instead of the striped outfit that they used with a black robe?
Most people would say because they can hold you in contempt. Welcome back. We're talking to Freeman Burt today. Only freemen.com. So it's interesting. A case where a woman is being accused of violating the biological weapons code of the chemical weapons code of. Keep in mind that's, of course, I've read that on air before. That's from the code that basically says that government can test anything it wants on the people and has their tacit sort of unknown consent to do so. It's a pretty scary code, actually, Title 18, but this one basically says it's unlawful for any person to develop, produce, otherwise acquire, transfer, directly or indirectly receive, stockpile, retain, own, possess, or use, or threaten to use any chemical weapon, or to assist or induce in any way a person to violate that paragraph. And it goes on, but that's pretty. That's a pretty dire accusation.
Yeah, it is, which is, pretty much everything in the U.S. code. And if you were to go through and dissect this particular section in detail, you would come to find out that it's impossible for you to violate this particular statute. But regardless, the important thing of this particular situation is what came out of it. Because this is what I'm finding out. For this to make any kind of a ruling, any kind of a decision, and give any kind of an opinion, they must introduce at least 1 grain of sand worth of truth on the whole beach. And you have to be able to find it. And very often they will give you the truth, and then they will try to cloud it with smoke and different things that are irrelevant to the point at hand. In this particular case, though, they were actually pretty direct, and like I've said before, I'm admiring the Supreme Court more and more the more I read more cases from them, and having more, I guess you could say, just the opposite of the lower courts. Not to say that the lower courts are not correct sometimes. But as a general rule, the lower courts don't operate in principles of law or anything along. Just go strictly statutory.
Which is interesting because, of course, the one of the maxims or the principles of law is to not do that. Actually, is to I wish I could remember off the top of my head, but it's very much to consider a court in equity as opposed to the letter of the law. You don't just look at the law and say, okay, you violated the law. You actually take each individual case on an individual basis, and you discover, you don't actually go by just what case law says. You actually, just you do a discovery of your own. So, the maxims are good in that way, that they actually remind a judge that, he needs to not just think in absolute terms. But you say the lower courts are not so much inclined to be that way?
No, they're more, I'm seeing lower courts more and more like you would see a traffic court.
Yeah.
You go to traffic court, you start talking even Constitution, and they'll tell you, I'm sorry, sir, we can't hear about the Constitution here. We're here to, talk about the traffic code and nothing else. And that's true. That's basically what they're for. Because, see, one way to look at approaching the court is like, imagine the court is in the middle of a big field, and it's nothing more than a dot in the middle of like a football field. And you can come at that dot from an infinite number of directions, right? You could come from a 90-degree point, from a 360-degree point, 270, or from 5 degrees, right? You could come from any one of those degrees. So depending on the degree or the point from which you're coming into the court, that's how the court sees you and your case. So how you come in, and if you come into a court of general jurisdiction, which is where we want to be, okay, then there's even a broader field of points from which you could come into the court. If you go into a court that's a traffic court, that's not a court of general jurisdiction, so you can only come in with a certain number of degrees. Maybe you can only come between 0 and 5. Anything that comes between 0 and 5 is going to be viewed in a certain way. And that's it. But when you're in a court of general jurisdiction, you could be coming in under military law, equity law, statutory law, principles of law. It's almost... So you have to be very careful about how you come into the court.
Yeah, it's nutty. So, let's talk about this court. That I noticed as I was reading along some of these, there was a couple references to something that I've been really studying lately, which it refers to states' right and states' sovereignty, basically. And it refers to it, as I've seen it now that I'm looking, it refers to basically the states, once the federal law is taken into consideration, anything in the state is considered as residual sovereignty or residual power, residual right. So that goes back to the concept that, the Constitution, the federal government's the law of the land. But you were saying that that the punishment in the federal punishment can't be any worse or longer or more expensive than the state.
Yeah, that's the way it's appearing, and it has to be with. There's a combination of principles involved here, but one of them is basically if, and of course we're talking about crimes, we're talking about political crimes, okay. So if there's a political crime in your neighborhood and there is a way for it to be dealt with in your neighborhood, and then the federal court or the federal people come along and they say, hey, well, we also have a law against that and you violated that in our code book. Well, the one in your community basically overrules the one in the federal realm. So you cannot be punished greater than what your own community is willing to punish you under. So it becomes sovereign basically over the feds.
Yeah. Very interesting. Well, I'll let you get into it, man. What do you want to talk about?
Well, first of all, this particular case deals with the 10th Amendment. And I put it in here. The 10th Amendment is very short. It just says, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states, respectively, or to the people. The key there is, or to the people. Now, The way the courts have been interpreting this thing by forgetting that part that says, or the people. They've been looking at it like that part doesn't exist. And the way they've been looking at it is by saying, if you little peon people cannot invoke the 10th Amendment. The Supreme Court in this case makes it clear that yes, they can. And the Supreme Court makes it clear that they are not stating anything new in this point. They're saying this has been around for a long time.
Nothing new under the sun, eh?
No.
All right, folks, stay tuned. We'll be back with Freeman Burt. We're talking about a case, if anybody wants to look it up, called Bond, B-O-N-D, versus the United States, 131S, CT 2355, Supreme Court of the United States. Carol Ann Bond, the petitioner, versus the United States. So what's going on here?
Well, what's very important about this case is that the Supreme Court Justice, Mr. Kennedy, made it clear that you, as one of the people, and actually not even one of the so-called people of the body of citizens. You don't even have to be a citizen to invoke this 10th Amendment, which is kind of funny. So you, as one of the free people, have a right to invoke the 10th Amendment, which obviously is there in the in the 10th Amendment. It says the people have a right to do that.
The only problem I have with the 10th Amendment is when they started writing these newer amendments, when they started actually amending the Constitution with the 13th, well, I think the 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, and on, is they put a little disclaimer in there that said basically that, I can't remember how it goes, but it's this power can be legislated by Congress or something like that. So it kind of nullifies the 10th Amendment in several cases. But other than that, I don't know. I think it's a very deceiving the way they worded this. The power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. See, I guess my problem is that the people are actually represented, and so Congress, technically, in that way, sort of becomes the people. And when Congress creates something, it creates, let's say, the Department of Education, the Department of Defense, and all that. It creates it, within the United States. So technically, the people are delegating any power that Congress creates. They are the people, the representatives of the people, so technically the people are delegating whatever Congress creates. I mean, that's the trick, sort of the trick of it.
Well, and I mean, we've discussed all this before of just who the people are and that type of meaning, definitions, whatever way you want to call it. But the more I keep reading into the Supreme Court and the principles that they make reference to, it really does appear that this government, so-called government, are supposed to be there for our benefit and for the benefit of protecting our property rights. And if you want to go through the overview of this case, this pretty much lays it out.
Yeah.
There on page 3.
Overview. Let's see. Petitioner challenged to Section 229 of U.S. Code Title 18, which we just read, based on the premise that Congress exceeded its powers by enacting the statute in contravention of basic federalism principles.
Yeah, now that's the first time I came across that federalism principles in a case before. This is the first time I've seen it written like that.
So Congress exceeded its powers by enacting the statute. So they enacted 229 when they accused this woman. I guess they could say empowered the statute against her, enacted it against her. They acted in contravention of basic federalism principles, exceeding its powers. That's interesting because, of course, they're the ones that created it, so that's a little strange. But the Third Circuit held that, absent a state's participation in the proceedings, the petitioner had no standing to assert a 10th Amendment challenge. The Supreme Court held that the petitioner did have standing to challenge subsection 229 as an infringement upon the powers reserved to the states.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a lot, right? You just read this a lot. I mean, you could spend a lot of time just reviewing this little part right here. But of course, we can only kind of speak generally speaking. But what's really important about this is that the lower court was saying, I mean, and we just read it, right? It says, or the people. The lower court was saying that this woman is one of the people, had no standing under the 10th Amendment to enter any kind of a challenge.
Well, and that's it gets so convoluted when you start talking about who can, invoke certain aspects of the Constitution. But I mean, if you're invoking it in this way, I guess it's really, because what she's really saying is not that she's invoking it for herself. She's actually chastising the federal government for doing something against one of its own rules, as opposed to saying, I have a right, I have the First Amendment, I have a right. She's saying basically that she's pointing out procedural correctness, basically.
Yeah, well, and here's what I always say, that the way for this thing to make more sense is to always look at, and it doesn't matter what governmental body it is. It could be the government body of Walmart. It doesn't matter. If they step outside of their little cage and it hurts you, now you have a case against them. And now you can bring in their regulation and say, look, according to your regulation, it appears that the people agreed to allow you to do this, and the other. Well, you have done more than this, that, and the other. You also did that over there, which you're not authorized to do. And that cost me an injury. And you have a liability for that. But if you just simply say, well, you have a right and you shouldn't be doing that over there because, see, blah, 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 and I have a right to tell you not to do that. Well, a lot of people go to court and make that argument and lose. And this case actually brings it up that you have to have a concrete injury connected to whatever it is that you're saying was done or not done.
Says the U.S. Constitution, Article 3, standing requirement had no bearing on petitioner's capacity to assert defenses in her criminal case, and her appeal met constitutional standing prerequisites.
Yeah, this is another part where it gets confusing because especially the district courts, the lower courts, they try to restrict your standing in court statutorily, or they try to confine it to Article 3, and they try to confine it to like the $75,000 threshold and all these kind of things, and that's not true. That's not the only threshold for you to be able to bring an injury to court, and there's cases that backs it up.
Let's see. Petitioner could assert her own injury resulting from governmental action that exceeded the authority that federalism defined. Where are they saying federalism? What are they using as federalism? I mean, where's the definition?
Well, they kind of go into it, but the federalism it's and they call it an intertwined relationship with the state. So the federal government is supposed to actually protect the individual. Basically, it doesn't matter where the individual is, and the federal government with the state government are supposed to work together to protect the individual and basically not cause him harm.
Well, so many jokes could be made about that statement. We'll be back, folks. Stay tuned.
The mission was successfully completed. Reality.
Hi, neighbor. Welcome again to this neighborhood. I'd like to show you something. You know what this is? Maybe if I press this button. Imagine every person that you see is somewhat different from every other person in the world. Some can do some things, some can do others. Did you ever think of the many things you learned to do? Many things you learned. Did you ever grow anything in the garden of your mind?
All right, folks.
You can grow ideas in the garden of your mind.
So the Supreme Court actually ended up overturning this decision by the lower court. The Third Circuit's judgment was reversed and remanded in a 9-0 decision. Now, there's a little farther in. It kind of explains something that's kind of important. One who seeks to initiate or continue proceedings in federal court must demonstrate. Okay, that means if you petition the Supreme Court, you must show in your petition, and remember that petition is not going to the court, it's going to the Bar Association, which will then determine whether you can go to court or not, which I think is just an absolute travesty of justice, but okay. So if you want to continue in the court, in other words, you want to challenge the lower court and go to the Supreme Court, among other requirements, both standing to obtain the relief requested and, in addition, an ongoing interest in the dispute on the part of the opposing party sufficient to establish concrete adverseness. When those conditions are met, U.S. Constitution Article 3 does not restrict the opposing party's ability to object to relief being sought at its expense. So in this case, the requirement of the Constitution standing didn't really affect anything.
Well, but they're talking there about the standing basically for this lady to make her objection to what happened to her.
Right.
In the lower court.
It says a defendant's challenge to a conviction and sentence satisfies the case or controversy requirement, which is what we just read, because incarceration constitutes a concrete injury, and that's an interesting statement right there. Caused by the conviction and redress. Caused by the conviction. So incarceration caused by the conviction constitutes a concrete injury, and is redressable by invalidation of the conviction. Well, that's exactly what she did. So very interesting.
Yeah. So we can see that all these elements that many patriots and many people that want to be free, they talk about. I mean, they're correct, okay? The thing is, how you bring it into their court is what makes the difference. So presentation is key to getting these people to listen to you. And even if your presentation is 100% perfect, they still may not hear you because some of these people running these lower courts can't hear. And I mean that's a fact. So you have to make your argument as solid so that when they hear it or when they see it, it has to trigger them to think, well, what will the higher court say if these people decide to move it to a higher court? And that's what you have to get the judge to think about, because if the judges cannot think that way, or if you don't trigger them to think that way, then they're just going to throw your case in the ground file. And it's sad but true.
Well, yeah. What else? What else on this?
Well, here's another point. Well, I mean, we could keep going through every one of these points, but here's the other thing that is really not addressed by especially the federal district courts. Now, federal district courts are in fact courts of record, but at the same time, they are courts of limited jurisdiction. So you would have to ask yourself, well, how can there be a limited court and an unlimited jurisdiction court at the same time? Yet they are.
Yet they are.
But then again, so is pretty much. You know?
Hey, I sent you a question the other day. You didn't actually respond to me. I was curious. I was actually going over and I was reading the definition of jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked all over the place at the definition, the legal, true definition of jurisdiction. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. This only says that courts have jurisdiction. It doesn't say anything about police. It doesn't say anything about anything else but courts. So when you're talking about jurisdiction, the law, from what I can tell, only applies to courts. So where do police get jurisdiction? If a jurisdiction is basically... By the way, when you define jurisdiction, it literally means jurisdiction. So diction meaning you're actually deciding on the law and declaring what the law is. You're actually declaring where the law has been broken. You're literally, like a judge is supposed to do. How can a police officer thus have jurisdiction? Because the police officer would have to literally hold basically a case right there, and I don't see how that can be.
Well, here's the easiest way for me to look at it. Jurisdiction is authority. And what's authority? Authority is permission. So if you're in a court and the court has jurisdiction, it means that it has authority over a particular case that has been presented to the court with the permission of the litigant.
Yeah, which is the point. How can a police officer possibly, have the right power and authority to administer justice by hearing and determining controversies? Power, authority, and control. I mean, how can a police officer have any of that? Because it's not his job to hear controversies. He doesn't have the authority to do any of those things, and that's where one of the things that I'm trying to be able to do is to explain people how to behave when they are around quote unquote law enforcement people, because they are not judges. So do not treat them like they are judges. They have nothing to judge. Okay? The only things that a police officer basically can enter a judgment about is on his particular safety or the safety of something around him, be that property or, somebody else's physical property, their body, or the enforcement or the ensurement that a particular regulation is being followed, and that's after the policeman has already made the cause that that person is already operating under that particular law. For example, traffic law. Well, it's interesting because, you go down these definitions and none of them apply to anything but basically your elected government, your judges, and possibly your legislatures. But the power, right, or authority to interpret and apply the law, police officers don't have that. The authority of a sovereign power to govern or legislate, that's certainly not police. They're not a sovereign power. The power or right to exercise authority, control, well, that might apply to some, psychopath. But, for the most part, I don't see how any police officer actually has jurisdiction, except other than what you say, which is we're so stupid that we give them our little we basically give them our hall pass and say, yeah, I'm yours, baby. Do with me as you will.
Yeah, and then we don't question anything. We don't doubt anything. And then we open our mouth, right? We don't exercise our right to be silent around them.
The limits or territory within which authority may be exercised. Well, technically authority may not be exercised if we're going to go by the letter of the law at all. So, no police officer technically ever has that kind of power. Or authority.
No, they don't.
Interesting. Very interesting. All right, well, we'll examine this a little further when we come back. Guest today is Freeman Burt from Colorado. Stay tuned, folks.
Don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are men. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful. Let us use that power to make this life a wonderful adventure. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world to do away with greed. A world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass and dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. Let us all unite.
Welcome back, folks. You're the Corporation Nation. I'm Clint. With me today is Burt, Freeman Burt from Colorado. His website is onlyfreeman.com. We're just shooting the shite today about the law and how weird it is, how very strange. Now, I found this kind of interesting thing. I was looking at the variations of the word jurisdiction. And one of you either have jurisdiction in the general sense, you have alienable jurisdiction, or you have, compulsory jurisdiction, which is very interesting because when a police officer does approach you, at that point, he doesn't have any. He has no jurisdiction over you whatsoever. The only way he can actually do that is to make you become alienable to his authority. So the word alienable means proper to be the subject of alienation or transfer. So this is why he wants to see your driver's license. He wants you to identify yourself so that you can become alienable. Your person, of course, is alienable. Any rights that you might have nothing to do with the rights that your person has. So when he alienates you, when you get alienated, you've transferred the title of your property over to him. You've literally given up anything. There's a Latin term. It's alieni juris. A-L-I-E-N-I. Juris, under the control or subject to the authority of another person. For instance, an infant under the authority of his father or guardian, a wife under the power of her husband. And interesting, Bert, the term is absolutely in contrast, opposite from the word sui juris. You remember we were talking about that.
Yeah, and sui juris is basically the opposite of being incompetent.
It's the opposite. I mean, if you describe that, it's the opposite of being in a position or property be the subject of alienation. I mean, that's you're not a ward of the court because you have your wit about you.
Yeah.
So if the second you surrender your person to the police officer in the form of an ID, you've just entered and you've become part of the alienable jurisdiction. You're now alienable, whereas without the identification, there is no way to establish that jurisdiction. I think I'm starting to understand.
Well, and here's another point is that, okay, if we use the policeman as an example, you're on the side of the road, he approaches you. Now, when he approaches you, one of the first things that he wants to do is what? Inspect. And inspect what? Your person. Okay? Now, many people confuse what that means. When they say they want to inspect your person, that means they want to inspect your personhood. Not that they want to stick their hands in your pants and check that person of yours. No, they want to check your fictional personhood. Your personhood, your membership in whatever it is that this policeman is operating in.
You just said they don't want to check my member. Wait a minute, I'm confused.
Well, maybe they might want to check your member.
So, it's, you start looking at these terms and where they come from. Alienor, alien with an O-R on it. He who makes a grant, transfer of title, conveyance, or alienation. You're an aliener as soon as you hand over your license. As soon as you identify yourself as something less than human, subhuman, an artificial, a fictional entity that you're surety to. As soon as you do that, you become an aliener. He who makes a grant, transfer, title, conveyance, or alienation. It's ouch.
Well, but here's the thing, because we don't want to get too hung up on the reality of the fact that you operate in fiction. That sounds crazy. But it's true.
You've lost it, man.
So that reality that you're operating in fiction operates all around us all the time. And remember, if you join a health club, they give you a membership, which makes you a fictional member of this fictional club. Okay, the club it's a building with workout equipment in it, but the equipment and the building, that's real, but your membership is fictional. And the regulations that you have to operate under as a member of that health club is all fictional. Okay, so the same thing applies when you're operating in traffic or you're operating in a body politic or whatever. It's all fictional. So don't get too insulted about the fact that you're operating in a fictional personhood. But you must recognize that each personhood operates within a certain determinate set of rules. And one place where this is very obvious, and people, I mean, you can just go to any airport and watch the thousands of people go through and have their bodies scanned like they were property. The TSA operates under an erroneous notion that your personhood includes your body. It does not. TSA only has the authority to inspect your person, which is your personhood as a passenger, not your body. The only thing that they can physically inspect is cargo. You are not cargo. Okay, your personhood is also not cargo. Okay, so your personhood is your identification, it's your ticket, those types of things which establishes your membership in the body politic or your membership in that particular capacity as a passenger. But people don't understand that there's a huge difference between your person and your body.
Your identification, your character, your, everything but the actual physical, living, sentient thing that you are. Everything else, your credit score and everything else is your person. And
it's
that's
all
what
part
they
of
have.
your person, exactly.
Right.
So if someone wants to inspect your credit score, What are they going to do? Stick their hands in your pants like TSA does? No, it has nothing to do with your body.
So next time you go to the airport and they say, well, I'm going to feel you up, just give them your driver's license. Go ahead and feel my card.
Yeah.
That's my person. What's wrong? That's my person.
Yeah, run your hand all the way up until you hit the torso of the driver's license. So we need to comprehend that. I'm actually going to be doing another booklet just specifically on TSA, because we need to basically put ourselves in a position where we can sue TSA. They're actually extremely vulnerable.
Yeah.
People don't know that. They're very, very vulnerable, and they're easy to sue because most of the people that work for TSA don't have a clue about anything. Now, the truth is most policemen also do not know much about the law. Okay? All they know is procedures. They don't know anything about the law, so they're actually also pretty easy to sue if you
set it up.
Lay the groundwork.
Yeah, that's hard for people, of course, but I think the more confidence you get in understanding this, the more easy it'll be. We'll be back, folks. Stay tuned. Corporation Nation.
It is like a finger pointing away to the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger or you will miss all that heavenly glory. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless, like water. Like water. Water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
All right, folks, welcome back.
Run water.
You're in the Corporation Nation. I was just thinking, Burt, when a police officer tells you that he wants to search your car, I guess technically, since the car is a registered thing, and you've provided the registration notice that you have registered that thing, then technically that becomes part of a person as well. It becomes just a corporate fiction as well, and you pretty much have conceded to the fact that it can be searched.
Well, not. Your car, of course, becomes a vehicle,
exactly,
which is a mode of transportation, and then you are the driver of that vehicle. Okay, and then everyone in your car, because of the fact that it is a vehicle and you are identified as a driver, they then by default become passengers, whether they paid you or not. They are paid passengers, and they're treated as such by the cops. But here's a very important point that people need to do a lot of research on, and that is probable cause. Now, I've always said this: if you were to behave like a nice, respectful, educated slave, you would get a hell of a lot further than the basic citizen who thinks he's not a slave. Okay? So if you actually took the mental capacity and classified yourself as a slave, but an educated slave, you could beat the pants off of 99% of the citizens out there.
Well, okay, so I suppose so. The other question I'd have then is, so if your passengers, if your friends, your parents, your children, whatever, suddenly become passengers when it's proven that you're driving a vehicle in commerce, wouldn't that also make anything in the vehicle as, what's the word, cargo that you're transferring in commerce, which actually would give the commercial attendant the right to actually search that cargo, make sure that you're not breaking any of the commerce laws. I mean, that is truly kind of how this thing all really breaks down, right?
Well, I mean, yes and no. Here's how we have to look at it. When the policeman is operating under the capacity of one enforcing and ensuring the safety of traffic, okay, that policeman has a liability of making sure that every time he makes contact or sees a potential vehicle that is in commerce operating outside of the traffic regulations, he has a liability to ensure that those regulations are fulfilled. Okay? The key, of course, is ensuring that you are in traffic. So when the policeman approaches you, which is 99.9% of the time, is by engaging his emergency lights to cause you or pull over to the side of the road to allow him to go around you because he's advertising an emergency, which in fact doesn't exist. So when you stop and he then stops behind you, what is he in fact conducting? And this is the part that escapes people's minds. And this also applies to TSA, and this applies to any government agency or agent that is attempting to obtain an inch or a grain of sand worth of information from you. They're conducting an investigation. Now, you have to make the decision. Are you going to aid in that investigation to your detriment or not? Most people say, hey, yeah, I want to help you. Where's the rope? Here, I'll even help you put it around my neck. Let's go. That's the sad.
Well, it's business as usual, basically. I mean, everybody's so inundated with that. That's an interesting word, investigation, because the word vest is in there. I'm gonna have to look that one up, because if you're the victim of an investigation, I guess you're being vested in a circumstantial crime or evidence. But anyway,
yeah, well, you can participate and you can increase the value of that investigation or not. So you can invest in it or not.
Really, what the police officer there again is doing is first and foremost to identify the person, right? I mean, it pull you over, pretend to have an emergency, but if he can't identify you as a person that he has authority over, well, then he's kind of out of luck. He has no, even though they'll turn psychopathic on you, he really has no right to do anything.
No, and all rights, not rights, but all jurisdiction, all authority, in fact, originates from you. And remember, anyone can act under color of law. Anyone, anybody, a clown can act under color of law. You know, if you abide by his apparent authority. Anybody can do that. So it's up to you if you accept the other person's authority or not. And when you do not question authority, it means you're waiving your right to question it. In all kinds of different cases. You know, when you don't question, you waive it. But here's another point from this case that I thought was really, really interesting. Mr. Kennedy says a cardinal principle of separation of powers was vindicated at the insistence of an individual, indeed, who was not a citizen of the United States, but who still was a person whose liberty was at risk. Okay, and they're talking about another case of the INS. And this particular guy, was kicking and screaming that they had no authority to do what they were getting ready to do to him, which was to kick him out of the country. And they're comparing this guy here to this lady who was a citizen of the United States. So you don't even have to be a citizen of the United States to invoke the protection, protection really is the wrong way to look at it, to invoke the fact that those government employees have a fence around them that they're supposed to operate under. And that's the simplicity of it.
You want to call in, folks? We got another half hour. 1-800-313-9443. 800-313-9443. We're talking to Burt today from onlyfreemen.com. Jeez. It's gosh, the more you see it, I guess the way I feel anyway, the more I see what's happening, the less I feel bound by it. It's a very strange feeling, and yet I know that the force of authority is out there, and that at any time I can get my head beat in.
Well, and I mean, we cannot forget that one of the most dangerous things in life is ignorance.
Absolutely.
On our part and the people around us.
1-800-313-9443. We'll be back.
And the men who hold high places must be the ones who start to mold a new reality closer to the heart, closer to the heart. The blacksmith and the artist, the
All right, folks, welcome back.
in their art, forge their creativity.
Good times. Well, let's see. We got Fred. Familiar voice, Fred in Iowa. Welcome to the show.
Hi, guys. I Google or start page or search the term country dumb, a comma, and then explanation, people who act dumb but are smart. And then I scroll down, and it says, why I play dumb, the perks of playing dumb. In other words, why I searched country dumb, the term, it's about good old boys and Southerners is a little synonymous with, and they act dumb as hell, and they can get the other person to expose a lot of their information. I have a problem with that because I don't like to act deceptive. What I would rather be is wise as a serpent and innocent as a dove. And then there's one other thing, and you don't have to go into detail, but I pay by snail mail, and therefore I need an address to pay my bills. And I'll get off the air, boys. Have a good day. Or gentlemen, men, thank you. Bye.
Well, I wanted him to explain what he means by an address. You can have a post office box. You don't necessarily have to have an address if that's what he was referring to. But before we take another call, I wanted to read this one part here, Clint, from the same case. It says, an individual in a assert injury from governmental action taken in excess of the authority that federalism defines. Her rights in this regard do not belong to a state. Now, there's a lot in that little statement there, and of course one of the first terms is an individual. Of course, in a proper case, like we were talking about, that you can approach the same court from different angles, so the proper case has to be asserted correctly. And then they say her rights. So that they're
that's my favorite part.
Yeah, approaching her individually. Her rights in this regard, in this particular situation, in this unique moment, to the state. It belongs to her. Those are her rights, her individual rights, her right as the one little sand grain that makes up the body politic. The body politic owes her as an individual certain rights.
Very good point, and that's a very important thing to get across to people. Your rights do belong to government, not to you, because those rights don't necessarily they're not applied to you. They're applied to the person, like we've been talking about. So the fact that it says her rights in this regard do not belong to the state, in other words, they're not privileges. They're hers. I mean, that's a very rare statement that you will actually see them acknowledge. So yeah, it's an incredible statement there.
Want to take Joe?
Yeah. Of course, I'm reading. Joe, welcome to the show.
Hey guys.
Hey bud.
Thank you both so much. I look at Wednesdays and Thursdays as being a coin, and there's sort of two sides of this same coin. And what I mean by that is it goes back, I know I've said it before, but doesn't this go back to the King James Bible? I mean, it's all in there, and there's positive law and there's negative law, and everything you guys have been talking about tonight, they have to base their stuff, or they do base their stuff on this, and so there are ways to hold them to that.
Yeah, I mean, again, they're also tricking us into leaving that spiritual jurisdiction, if you will, and claiming an earthly one. So, there is a lot to be said there in that regard.
Well, and you know what's funny? The principles of law in general that we actually would like to apply to each other, the government conveniently likes to apply to itself. It's just like, for example, in order for you to sue the so-called federal government, they want you to give them notice first so that they can try to resolve it administratively. And that is actually an honorable thing to do, because if you have a problem with your neighbor, wouldn't you want to resolve it between you guys in a friendly manner without involving the courts? That's the same thing that they try to operate. They want you to give them notice first to see if you can resolve it in a friendly manner. And you can actually use that to your advantage, because most of these agencies then want to take on the position of a sovereign. And if they take the position of a sovereign, especially over you, then they kind of have to prove that you're their subject, which makes it kind of interesting.
Yeah, we were talking with Daniel last night about that. Actually, that's what I'm going to open up next week with, is the fact that Daniel no longer is provable. He's gotten rid of every modicum and shred of evidence that he exists as an artificial person. So no longer can Daniel be forced to be a person. He doesn't have a person to offer. He has no certificates, no birth records, no nothing anymore. So he is literally, the concept of not being able to prove a negative. Well, he is a negative now. He cannot be under positive law because he is diametrically opposed to it.
If I didn't if I didn't misunderstand what he was saying, he can still go into a courtroom, and if he does things, the correct way, I hate to put it that way, but he can be in there and not go past the bar or not do all these things and still act in that place, and they have to acknowledge what they've anchored it to. So I guess that was the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, I don't think he would I don't think he would ever appear, because there's nothing to appear as except himself. But he might go to court for when he's not being accused of something. But I don't think he would.
And not to interrupt you, but this is the beauty about tonight, and this is what Burt does. Free Burt. You can do all this stuff depending on the court and how they want you to represent yourself with paper. You may never have to even walk in there and do anything. So I guess I love Thursdays because the way I see it, they're like the flip side of the same coin that you guys are drilling down on really hard. And so anyways, that's all I'm trying to say. I love what's going on here. So thanks, guys.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, man.
All righty, Joe. That brings us to Jim. Jim in Illinois. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing, Clint? Hello, Burt. Anyway,
howdy.
I was going to do my I mate's impression of a pirate, because that's what we'd be talking about is pirates, man. And I'm telling you, I was going down the street, and I was trespassed, molested upon, whatever you call it, by a cop. Minding my own business, man, you know. He didn't have probable cause. I don't even think he had reasonable suspicion. He just wanted to stop somebody and invite himself into their business. And I put up all the barricades there, you know, was polite about doing it. But the dude detained me, arrested me, kidnapped me, and put me in a cage. They stole my property from me. I had to go pick it up 2 days later. They upset my whole schedule, pissed me off like you wouldn't believe, you know. And it's like, man, you know, I'm trying to raise my kid, and I'm trying to take care of my household. You know, it's like, man, you know, this is crazy stuff, man. And they're just straight up pirates. I'm telling you, I told them I don't consent. You know, guy asked me what my name was. I told him I didn't have to tell him that. You know, I'm not required to tell you that. You know, I stood on my right, my unalienable rights, just to be a free man. All right?
Well, so then what you have to do now is then challenge his assumption that you were operating under the assumed driver's license.
Well,
and he would have to prove
walking. Burt, I'm walking. I'm not driving. I'm walking. I'm beating my feet on the pavement, brother. That's what I'm saying, man.
And he arrested you for that?
Do you walk funny? Is that what? No, I'm just kidding. We'll be back, folks. Stay on the line, because I think we might, you know, do something with this here. Stay tuned, folks.
Did you see the frightened ones? Did you hear the falling bombs? Did you ever wonder why we had to run for shelter when the promise of a brave new world unfurled beneath the clear blue sky?
Look, Mummy, the snow cloud.
Chaos theory, hurricane control, advanced privacy, massive ionospheric heaters, storm-absorbing supergel, nanoscale weather machines. All of these technologies exist in some form today.
Look, Mummy, the snow cloud up in the sky.
Goodbye, blue sky. Goodbye,
all right, folks, welcome back.
Blue sky. Goodbye.
Oh, good time. So, Jim, let me ask you a question, just to put this into perspective. Now, let's say that you're walking down the street, and some just random person comes up to you and starts asking you questions, starts harassing you, and then proceeds to basically wrong you, rob you, you know, beat you up, maybe put you in a handcuffs, well, whatever. Would you not pursue that person as someone who just...
Yeah, I've Clint, man, look it. I've been riding on a bus, and I disarmed a guy who killed one guy and attacked another with a knife, all right? I've been in the streets of Houston, man, where a dude pulled a gun on me, had a drop on me. My piece was in a holster, you know. He killed my friend, you know. They were going to rob. There was a crew of 3 of them. They're going to rob me and my buddy. You know, I drew my weapon and shot and killed him. I mean, so what's that tell you? You know, I will deal with somebody who's screwing with me. I live by a simple rule. It took me a long time to figure this rule out, but it is do no harm. The second rule is this. If you ain't sure what to do, refer back to the first rule, all right? And you know, so, you know, it's a good thing that I wasn't packing heat, man, you know, because dude basically kidnapped me, and I resent that.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, if someone off the street without a uniform and without the supposedly color of law...
I'm going to serve him, Clint.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because there's no difference between any other person and that person that's wearing a uniform. I just want to make that clear to everybody out there.
See, this is the thing, though, man, is, you know, law enforcement, man, I'm going to tell you, this ain't my first brush with the law. You know, I've had them sticker my mobile home where I had to live in my friend's warehouse, business warehouse for a week, you know, stuff. You know, I've had the cops do some raunchy crap, all right? And they are used to getting away with this. I mean, over and over again, I am not the only person this happens to. Man, they screw people over all the time. They throw down guns on them.
Well, they're a gang. There's no other way to look at it. But give me a shoot me an email and we can chat about this situation of yours.
Yeah. I tell you, it's just what's going to happen is come the court date, it's going to get dismissed. All right. So then the thing is do I hook up and pursue this? But you know, I'm a single parent right now, man. You know, it's like I'm telling you what, man. I don't have that kind of time to devote. But I'm just letting you know to illustrate and let other people know who are listening to this.
Yeah, but you have to make the time.
They keep doing these things to usins, you know, the so-called slaves, chattel, whatever you want to think. I like to think of myself as a free man, but, you know, and not sovereign to anybody. You know, my sovereign is my creator, and my creator is in my belief or image, and I don't subject anybody else to that. But, you know, as long as they're able to buffalo, intimidate individuals, and get away with it, because basically the police unions and the courts and the attorneys who have got us in this pile of crap continue to support these guys, they're going to do it.
Well, as long as people don't actually do anything about it, they're going to keep doing it. That's, I think, why Burt is so adamant about people going after these guys. Because, like you said, it would be like going after any other man on the street. Just because they have a uniform and a badge makes no difference whatsoever.
Well, the ACLU, they are pursuing an issue with the Jim Artis, which is the mayor of Peoria, Illinois, because he got upset because somebody was panning him on Twitter, all right? And he got the state's attorney's office to concoct an arrest and search warrant, and then use the Peoria Police Department to go storm this guy's house. They arrested 4 people and took computers and stuff, and one happened to have a little bit of weed on him. You know, it's crazy, man. It's crazy stuff, man. But, you know, that is how we live. And you're right, you know, Clint and Burt, yeah, we need to pursue this, man. But, geez, man, you know, it's like, make time. I'll try to.
Yeah, when it comes on to your own shoulders, it's a little harder to do, isn't it? I'm the same way. I mean, I have a case I need to still pursue when I went through the airport that I haven't done anything with, and that's been quite a while. So, I mean, I feel the same responsibility. I got to go after these people because they're acting, they're acting outside of their authority, and you know, we all have to burden the. we have to wear the burden. That's the problem. Yeah. So, you know, we can't. Otherwise, we have no right to complain, and we just have to be slaves to it.
Right. The one thing, well, in part I agree with that, and the other part I don't, because you know that conflicts with the do no harm thing. But if that airport thing was a municipality or some authority there, you only have 365 days with municipalities usually to go after them. You know. And then I think you got like 2 years on a 1983, and then, you know, this is just what I know. And then I've been learning other various ways of going after them, and that, all of which I'm basically a neophyte on and haven't tried anything. I did file in 1983 against 13 defendants when it came to my mobile home issue. But I couldn't pursue it, man. It got bigger than me, and I just could not pursue it. And
that's one of the tools they use is to make it expensive and make it stretch it out for many years if they can. So
you got other people want to talk, Clint. Hey, I do appreciate what the forum you have here, and I appreciate what you and Burt and the rest of your guys.
Well, shoot me an email. You obviously have a computer, right?
Yes, I do, Burt.
Okay, do you have Skype?
No, I don't.
Well, set it up, because that's how I communicate with people. I think you have a case. So why don't you contact me? We'll talk about more of the details of it and see exactly what you have, because when is your hearing?
It'll be the 28th of June. They're going to dismiss it.
Okay. There's a lot of homework that you need to do prior to that if you want to win this thing. So you need to contact me right away, okay?
Yeah, Burt. All right. Hey, thanks a lot, Clint, Burt. You guys take care. Keep you in my thoughts and prayers.
All right,
Be safe.
Take care.
Oh, boy.
That kind of stuff breaks my heart, you know?
Oh, looks like our last caller just dropped, so I guess we're not going to have a last caller. Well,
but you know, this is a great example of how things can happen. But here's another point that I'd like to bring up that I wanted to make sure I talk about. We all seem to have a high priority on health insurance. Okay? Now, let me ask this question. How good or of what importance is it to have healthy if you're going to spend 10 years of those healthy years in jail? Okay? Now, it's a very real possibility for you to find yourself in jail anywhere from 6 months to 2 or 3 years. Extremely easy. So one thing that we also need to consider is legal insurance. Okay? And the way I describe legal insurance is this way. You've got to have funds to be able to protect yourself. The funds do not have to come completely from you, but you got to have a group that's willing to support you. And you also need bodies, warm, breathing bodies that are going to back you up when you go to court as witnesses and to help you file papers and do this and the other. All that is critical in this battle.
Yeah, I agree. All right, another day down. Thanks, Burt, for joining us.
All right,
see you next Thursday, man. And, folks, take care. Stay tuned for Bob Tuscan.